Good day, colleagues, and welcome to the Gauteng Department of Education's program, LRIP Moderation Presentation. Today we will discuss moderation. What is it and why is it important? Moderation has two main components, which would be pre-moderation and post-moderation. Today we will be discussing pre-moderation a little bit more in depth. What is moderation and why is moderation important? What does the word moderation literally mean? It comes from late Middle English via Old French from Latin. It is the verb moderate, which means to control. Moderation is the process of teachers sharing their expectations and understandings of standards with each other in order to improve the consistency of their decisions about learning. The moderation process helps teachers make dependable decisions about student progress and achievement. The internal moderation process is focused on ensuring the basic practices related to assuring quality of educational practices is practiced in the school as it relates to teaching, assessment, and results management. What is moderation and why is it important? The purpose of moderation is to make consistent, valid, evidence-based decisions. Moderation can be used within an improvement cycle, before assessment, to build agreement around what achievement of standard looks like and plan the teaching and learning program. Why is moderation important in schools? The moderation process helps teachers make dependable decisions about student progress and achievement. It improves decisions at one point in time as well as over time. Schools use moderation processes to increase assessment dependability. Understanding the process of moderation and how it can be used in schools is a driver for improvement of student learning outcomes. Moderation enables teachers within a school to develop and apply a consistent and precise language of assessment, which can be used by teachers, students, and families to describe and discuss student learning. Let's take a look at moderation processes. Firstly, it's important to note that moderation processes are most effective when it's built on a culture of professional dialogue, support, and risk-taking, and where the teachers are open to learning and change. Teachers should not view the moderation process as personal critique, but rather room for improvement and a learning curve. The roles of leaders, teachers, and students should also be clearly defined, including a moderation leader or coordinator. The moderation processes should be planned, resourced, and reviewed. This could be done in terms of a management plan, where the expectations and deadlines are clearly outlined for all involved. Effective moderation is founded on a shared understanding of effective teaching, learning, and assessment across the school. The moderation process has three sections: planning, meeting, and reviewing. Who is responsible for moderation at schools and why? The SMT is responsible for moderation at schools. It is imperative that all activities and tasks are moderated. As you can see from our hierarchy, we have the subject teacher at the bottom, the departmental head above the subject teacher, and above them, the principal. If your school is set up in such a way, there might be another level between subject teacher and departmental head in the form of a subject head. This hierarchy is to show that each and every level of the hierarchy is responsible and accountable for moderation, and to make sure that each and every assessment task that goes out is moderated and of high quality and proper standard. Pre-moderation. Pre-assessment moderation ensures assessments meet the national standard. It includes detailed feedback and recommendations so that educators can revise all of their assessments to meet the required national standard. This involves the critique of the assessment task, and documentation, including marking rubrics, to ensure alignment with the required learning outcomes. This is to say that the moderation process should not just be a tick-boxing session. The moderation process is to ensure that the assessment is on the proper standard, and if it's not, to give feedback to the educator and make sure that they effect the changes. This also means that when doing pre-moderation, it is imperative for the educators to not only hand in the assessments, but also marking rubrics and memorandums so that the pre-moderation process can be done effectively. This provides the educator with confirmation that the assessment is fit for purpose or gives additional recommendations for improvement. The J1 pre-moderation form should be completed for each task during pre-moderation. Let's take a look at pre-moderation form J1. I'm sure at this time, this form has been mediated to all departmental heads and hopefully to the educators who will now be using them. It's quite an extensive form and has technical criteria, content coverage and cognitive demands, marking guidelines, as well as language. And then it has a little section for the verification of the moderation process. What do we look for when we pre-moderate? Pre-moderation validates the appropriateness, fairness, clarity, accuracy, and standard of assessment tasks and materials before they are used by the learners. So here's an idea of pre-moderation when you do an assessment task. These are some of the questions you'll be asking. Does it include adequate coverage and appropriate weighting and cognitive levels, having all types of questions? Is the language used grade appropriate? Are the instructions clear? Are the questions specific and not biased? Is the translation correct? Is the mark allocation suitable in terms of what is expected? This means that you should take a look as the moderator to make sure that there are no questions where the learners are asked to give a 5-sentence answer and it's only marked for 1 mark, or that it's a one word answer but the learner gets 2 marks. We should make sure that the mark allocation is suitable in terms of what is expected. And then also do the marks add up correctly per section and per the total of the paper. With this section, I would also like to remind moderators to make sure that there is a subtotal at the end of each question. One of the challenges to achieving effective pre-moderation faced by our departmental heads, especially those not from a language background, is that they do not necessarily know what to look out for when moderating a language paper. So we've decided to just give a quick rundown of what a response to text in a controlled text should look like. There should be 4 questions. Question 1 will be a comprehension test. It will be marked 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, or A, B, C, D, etc. Question 2 will be visual literacy. This is where learners are given a picture of some sort. It could be an invitation, it could be a comic strip, it could be an advertisement, and the questions are based off of the picture. Question 3 will be a summary. Please note that the summary should be marked according to a rubric. And question 4 will be language structures and conventions. It will be numbered 4.1, 4.2, or ABC, etc. And this should be in context, meaning it should be related to or from the comprehension text. Cognitive levels. Tests must adhere to taxonomy levels. Barrett's taxonomy is used for comprehension in English, home language, and FOL. So the distribution of the cognitive levels are as follows. Cognitive levels 1 and 2 must make up for 40% of the assessment. Ideally, level 1 must be 20% and level 2 20%. Cognitive level 3 must make up the next 40% of the test or assessment, and then cognitive levels 4 and 5 must make up 20% of the test or assessment. Again, ideally 10% for level 4 and 10% for level 5. Lastly, questions should be scaffolded from easy to hard, from level 1 to level 5. It is important that we start off with the lower cognitive levels and end off with a higher cognitive. Here are some examples of cognitive levels. Level 1 will be literal comprehension. These would include question verbs such as substantiate or prove, describe, identify, knowledge, list, compare. The answer should be in the text or should be basic knowledge. Level 2 would be reorganize and would include words such as summarize, recognize the differences, understand, explain, defend, generalize, or give examples. Level 1 and 2 will account for 40% of the task. Level 3 is inferential comprehension and will account for the next 40%. This is where the learner cannot necessarily directly get the answer from the text, but if they just think about it a little bit, they might be able to get the answer. These would include application, compare, main thoughts, cause and effect, explain, conclusion, make an inference, true or false, complete, problem solving, visual and graphical interpretation, especially for question 2 visual text, and multiple choice. Level 4 and 5 will then represent the next 20%. Level 4 is evaluate and would include things like give your own opinion, do you think this is valid or invalid, analyze, agree or disagree, substantiation of opinion, simplify, compare, moral judgment, differentiate, and distinguish. Level 5 is appreciation. This would be discuss, response, give your own opinion, empathy or not, how would you act, discuss language use or format, genre, topography, categorize, combine, or explain. Let us look at a practical example of cognitive levels. Imagine for a moment that this is an extract of a full text received by learners. This is what level 1 questions would look like. It would be things like make a list, name list of the different gods that you would find in the text ancient Egypt. Describe what the crown of the king looked like. How did the crown of the king of Upper Egypt differ from the crown of the king of Lower Egypt? And then compare the crown of the king of Upper Egypt to the crown of the king of Lower Egypt. Level 2 questions. Explain how the Egyptians worshipped their gods. Why wasn't it a good idea to plant grapes in Egypt? In what ways was the crown of Upper Egypt different from that of Lower Egypt? Write a sentence or 2 sentences about the building of pyramids. Again, these answers should be directly from the text. Level 3 questions account for 40% of the marks. These are inferential questions, meaning the learners cannot get the answers directly from the text, but if they take a moment and think about it, they will be able to infer or deduce the answers from the text. These would be questions such as, say whether the following statements are true or false. If false, write the correct answer. Teachers do not give marks for false and the reason, only 1 mark if the answer is also correct. It could be questions such as choose the correct answer and write the number on the open space, complete the following sentences, what are the main ideas or thoughts of paragraph 2, the pharaoh started to build his tomb when he became king, what was the effect of this on the economy or workers, and then what did the workers do when they could not lift heavy stones to build the pyramid. Level 4 and Level 5 questions are both higher order thinking questions, and it counts for 20% of the marks. These would be questions such as, after reading the text, what do you think of the way the workers were treated? Or do you agree with Egyptians that the heart is the most important organ in the body? Give a reason for your answer or motivate your answer. Teachers should be mindful to teach their learners that they should write a sensible answer and not just any answer. They should be led by the text as far as possible. When moderating, it's also important to make sure that the memorandum leaves space or leaves room for alternative answers that might be given by the learners. It is important for the educator to not just write own answer, they can give a couple of examples so that when you do moderate, you have an idea of what line of thinking, what line of answer the educator is wanting. Compare the way in which the Egyptians buried the dead with the way we do it, or how is the burial of Egyptians different of the way we bury our dead, and then was it a good thing or practice to let workers work on the pyramid instead of the fields? Again, we won't be giving answers only for saying yes or no, but how they substantiate the answer. Level 5, if you were king, how would you have built your grave? How do you feel about the idea of mummifying a body? And explain why the Egyptians mummified the dead or made mummies of the dead. Again, this accounts along with level 4 for 20%, and it is higher order questions, allowing the learners to evaluate and give their own opinions. We have created this cognitive level form, which can be completed by the educator, feedback and recommendations. Departmental heads, subject heads, moderators, please make use of the pre-moderation process to ensure that tasks that are being administered are applicable, fair, of good quality and compliant to policy. And where it isn't, please give feedback to the educators and make sure that they do affect the changes. Pre-moderation should not just be a tick box process where you simply comply but you don't really check. This is for the betterment of the educators as well as the learner and the learning experience and the learner outcomes. Please give feedback and recommendations to educators and follow up to make sure that the recommended changes to assessments are effected before the assessments are administered. I thank you for your time and attention and hope that pre-moderation will now be a breeze for you.